to Valhalla!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of PlayUp and Chat. Continuing on our theme, today we've got another board game lined up for you. But before anything else, you're listening to me, Benji.
And with me, Don Chap. I am the one who shouted Valhalla in the beginning.
Yes, indeed. And Valhalla is the theme for our episode today. We're looking at one of my first board games to enter my collection. We're looking at Blood Rage. Once again, with this series, we're going to go over a little bit of the rules in the beginning, how to play the game, what the game is like, and then we'll go over into our sort of rating system that we came up for these rate and review section of the podcast.
But before we get into the episode, we would like to remind you, if you like what we do here on PlayUp and Chat and PlayUp in general, you can support us directly on PlayUp.
On Patreon.
On patreon.com/PlayUpMT for as little as €3 per month.
Yeah, we got another new patron on board this week, and we would like to say thank you to Symbiote. Thanks so much for following on the Patreon, dude. Thanks so much. Means a lot.
Every little counts, man. Thank you very much. And with Symbiotes adding to our Patreon list, we have achieved 5 Patreons, Ben. This is an achievement for us. For most people thinking, 5 Patreons is not a lot. But believe you me, it is a big deal to us.
Yeah, we love every single one of you guys. Thank you so much. You help us do what we do and improve the podcast quite regularly now. This is another episode that we're in here in our studio with the new equipment, and we're loving it so much. Thank you, guys. So let's jump into this episode.
Blood Rage, the Viking-themed game. So, as we... Hold on.
Wait, pause. That was really good intro. Stick with that. But we need the creators of the game now.
Yes, we do. I'm going to use this as a fan because it's getting hotter.
This was a Kickstarter, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
A game by Eric M. Lang and art by Adrian Smith. Published by Cool Mini or Not, Studio McVeigh, and Guillotine Games.
You got all that?
What?
Can we have that here?
Oh shit, yeah. Okay, so future Don doing the editing of this podcast. Yeah, we love you. Say you love yourself.
I love you, man. Alright, so Blood Rage is actually published by Cool Mini or Not, Studio... How do you say that?
Studio McVeigh, I think. And Guillotine Games.
Guillotine Games, yeah. Designed by Eric M. Lang, and the art was done by Adrian Smith.
Adrian Smith.
That font is not...
Yeah, that font is not easy to read. Round enough. Wait, shall we do that again? Let's do that again just for good measure.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got Blood Rage, a game by Eric M. Lang and the art done by Adrian Smith.
Published by Cool Mini or Not.
Studio McVeigh and Guillotine Games. Let's do that again.
Published by Cool Mini or Not. Studio... No, you're going to have to say that one.
Okay, start again.
Published by Cool Mini or Not.
Studio McVeigh.
And Guillotine Games. Well done, guys. I believe this was a Kickstarter.
Yeah, I do
remember something about it being a big... I think this is where our Kickstarter hype started from. But I believe you bought this not from a Kickstarter, though.
No, I didn't get this direct from the Kickstarter. I got this game from...
Your local game store, yeah?
Yeah, it was the local game store, but it actually was that weekend of the Comic-Con here in Malta.
Oh, right. I remember. Yeah, because you were actually asking me, like, which game should I buy, considering the game, the group that we were at the time. And I think you actually bought the expansion with it at the time.
I did, yes. It was actually a pretty good deal. The owner of that particular shop gave me a really good discount on it with the expansion included. So I just went ahead and bought both together. We are going to be focusing mainly on the main game here today.
Yep.
the expansion doesn't really add much other than a sixth player.
Well, the expansion you have, because then there's another
fifth
expansion.
player, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the expansion I have.
All right, so heading over to the rules summary. So the way it works is each player is dealt 8 cards, and then basically through a draft system, each player gets to select a card and pass on the cards to the player on his left, eventually until they have 6 cards in hand, discarding the last 2. This obviously builds up a strategy of how you want to move forward with the game.
Yeah, now, listeners, new players might be a little bit daunted by the whole drafting mechanic in this game. The rules actually say that for the first time you play, if you'd rather skip the drafting, to go ahead to look through the cards and, understand what they do and then get into the drafting later, that's also a possibility. But as intended, the game starts with a drafting. These cards are bonuses, buffs, and they get better as long as throughout the game. After drafting the God's gifts, as they say, you go into action phase.
So the action phase, you're going to set up your rage to your clan's current rage stats. This is dependent on what's on your board, if you have any add-ons, if you have any glory and stuff like that. We'll get into those in a bit. And rage basically allows you to know what actions you can take, because certain actions require a certain amount of rage until you've hit 0 rage, which means then you can't do anything.
Yes, if we think back to the time of the Vikings, they raided, they pillaged. What did they need for that? They had to be rageful, and they had to just, channel all that inner power and rage. So I like that this is included in the game. I think it's an interesting take on the currency for actions. But yes, you use the actions you spend rage to complete your actions, and the actions include invading, marching, there's upgrading, you could play a quest, and you can also pillage. Starting with invading, you pay rage equal to the token's strength, and we'll get into that in a little bit, and you can move it from off the board, right? Into a region that is not Yggdrasil. Unless otherwise stated, there are certain expansions in certain pieces that say that certain monsters can invade Yggdrasil, but basic pieces and warriors invade from the outside. Ships obviously can only invade in the fjords, and the good thing about this that I like is that leaders can actually invade for free.
Yeah, pretty much. It makes sense, because in leadership, you kind of want to inspire the others to move with you, or they're taking command from their leader. So yeah, I guess the leader has a certain amount of flexibility for the game to allow you to do certain actions that other pieces won't naturally allow you. Moving on to March. Now, while invade is technically going into another province to take hold, hopefully, and pillage in it, marching is that you pay 1 rage to move any of your figurines from one province that is empty to another province. So basically, it's just a marching action, right? But it doesn't mean because you're marching into a territory, you're invading. So it's a complete different thing. You're strategizing a move to kind of set up yourself for a turn. You have to play the game to kind of understand the difference between invade and march, to get a concept of how this strategy is relevant.
Yeah, and an important point to note here is that ships can't march.
Yeah, because they don't have legs.
Exactly. I mean, if maybe, that might actually be interesting. What if the Vikings made a way, amphibious ships, dude? Imagine ships had legs and they went on land. Oh my goodness, that would be...
But you're going into a realm of fantasy here, which this one...
doesn't
really take on.
That does not take on in this game. There are upgrades that you can do, obviously not relating to putting legs on ships. That would be crazy. But the upgrades that you can do are you basically pay rage equal to the strength of an upgrade card in your hand. Upgrades usually come from the cards that we drafted, the God's Gifts, at the beginning of each round. And you can upgrade the figure, and you can... Actually, if you upgrade the figure, you can immediately invade with it for free.
Yeah. So again, you're kind of wanting to make the best of the hand you have, and you have to choose your strategy well when you're doing this.
And thinking and talking about strategies, a good strategy, or perhaps not a good, will not say it like that. Let me, future Don, you can cut that out. Okay.
Okay.
When talking about strategy, actually, a good thing to keep in mind are the quest cards. Now, quest cards can be played at no rage cost. Basically, you pay your quest card from your hand face down onto your clan sheet, and you're committed to it. Now, quest cards can give extra points at the end of the game. Glory points, that is. In fact, the game is heavily based on these glory points, and we'll get to that later on in a little while.
Yep. And then obviously our favorite part is the pillaging part, which is not the same as invade, by the way. I think this is where, and you'll see later on how we graded this board game. The fact that there are a few keywords that have very similarity in actions may confuse beginning players until they get used to the mechanics properly. So the pillage mechanic is at no rage cost, you choose to unpillage an unpillaged province. So at no rage cost, you choose an unpillaged province. My goodness.
Okay.
So pillage works like this. At no rage cost, you choose an unpillaged province with at least one of your figures in it, or in a supporting fjord, so the ships, right? To attempt to pillage it. Starting with the player to the left, the players may move the figurines from adjacent provinces into the empty space. So basically, they start fighting to see who ends up pillaging. This is where a bit of interaction is done between players. I think it's the only time you actually see interaction between players.
Yeah, one of the only times, and it's actually a battle. So all the players with the figures in this particular province, choose to battle. Battle takes on the course of revealing cards and adding up the relevant strength costs of that is either on the card or the strength of the actual figurine and all the troops within that province or even supporting province. All the losing players return all the played cards to their hand. The winner has to discard the cards that they played. Obviously, this gives, I think, it gives a good strategic advantage to the loser, perhaps in the future. The characters and figures that die actually go up to Valhalla.
Yep, and some cards actually, it would be a good thing if your figurines did die, and we'll come to Ragnarok in a bit, because that's when a lot of figurines die. Ragnarok is important, and we'll come to that later. However, it's a good thing if your guys die to a certain extent, because they do give you victory points. And some cards, like like Ben said, certain quests, if you manage, or certain upgrades actually, if you manage to have so many figurines die, you get certain amount of victory points, whereas when they die normally and you don't have any of the upgrades or quests, they mean nothing.
Yeah, so this is kind of the concept of, Vikings back in the day. So Vikings would go into battle, and it would be, even if you have seen the TV series Vikings, dying in battle is considered the most glorious thing you could do. And so you're rewarded by going to Valhalla. And as Don mentioned, there are cards that give victory points for that. And actually, you can even... going back to the battle, the winning player and then gains battle glory, and a lot of these things are
these things are very much implemented through certain mechanics put into play. Going on to how these actions are played, basically. So we're still stuck on actions. You choose one, and then the next player to your left chooses an action, until eventually no one has rage left to play any actions. It is not recommended whatsoever to try to get a player to do all their actions during that player's turn, meaning they're going to exhaust all their rage during that turn and then passing on, simply because then you're not going to build up a certain players won't be able to build up a strategy. In fact, the rulings do state you place one action, spend the rage accordingly. It moves on to the next one until eventually no one has any rage left.
Yeah, and it's important to note that after you have no rage left, you can't do anything else for the rest of that turn, the rest of that age. So in a sense, there's no invading, there's no pillaging. Even free actions that don't cost any rage to do cannot be done after all rage has been spent. Essentially, all you're left doing is defending yourself if another player comes in and attacks, and that's basically it.
Also, despite that I said that usually you don't want to spend all your actions and wait for them, before I said that you might want to not spend all your actions and then pass on your turn as a gameplay mechanic. However, you may choose to play things which don't require rage just to get an idea what people are up to, and then hold all your rage until basically everyone's raged out. And so therefore you have just a bunch of turns for you to place things and people can't interrupt you that way. There is that strategy that can be applicable, but you have to really play it well in order to combat. So basically what that means is if no one has rage left, or at least one player doesn't have any rage left, that player skips his turn and is back to the player who has rage left.
Yes, it's actually quite useful in a sense that you're doing actions when other players can't do actions. It gives you the statistical advantage.
Moving on to the next one, it is the discard. So basically once everyone's done their turn, you're going to discard your hand down to one card. So you're going to choose one card from your hand you want to keep, and the rest you're going to discard them. There's no real benefit per se of discarding cards unless you have an upgrade card that tells you so. I don't remember any card actually from what the last few games we played that gives you that advantage.
With the cards, the thing is that as each we'll come to it in just a little bit. The game is played in multiple rounds, so the cards get better as the rounds progress, and so you might want to keep that one really good card. Perhaps discarding the cards in this manner doesn't do anything or add to the game. You're just replacing them for what are going to be better cards in the future.
Yeah, actually, coming to think of it, while mentioning about getting benefits, it actually comes to the quest, not the upgrades. Sorry, my mistake. Ben, you want to cover the quest part?
Yes, definitely. So after discarding cards, we move on to the quests. And here in this phase, we reveal and discard all played quest cards, gaining the relevant rewards for the completed quests. Some rewards may be gaining glory points, some rewards may be gaining upgrades, some rewards may even bring your troops back or send your troops to Valhalla, and this all adds up with the different points that you can gain at the end of the game.
And I need to use the bottle. Sorry.
Potty break.
Potty break. I'll be right back really quick.
Can I just talk about Ragnarok? Or I'll pause. Hello everybody, we're back. Don went to the toilet to relieve himself. He squeezed his lemon, made some lemonade.
From
maybe
the
that's
lemonade you gave me.
Yes, from the lemonade that I gave you. Hey, it went in yellow, it came out yellow. Okay, that's a bit of a not good for you guys. Let's not listen to that. So, moving on. And moving on to the final phase of the phases of each age, we have Ragnarok.
Dum, dum, dum.
Now, Ragnarok is, what it is. It basically destroys the doomed province. At the start of each round, there is a province that is doomed to be destroyed in Ragnarok. Now, all figures in it and the supporting fjord as well, so all the ships are destroyed, and they go straight to Valhalla.
Bringer of the Ragnarok, bringer of the Ragnarok, welcome to Valhalla. Sorry. So yes, and then basically once everything is sent to Valhalla, you count the points accordingly for that, and then you release everyone from Valhalla, being able to basically reincarnate in this case. But that's not the concept here. It's more that otherwise you'll end up without figurines, or you'll have to overprint figurines by the end of the game. So this makes a kind of a recycling of the pieces.
Yeah, so after this, all figures are returned, and the new age starts. All in all, the game is played over three different ages, and so there are 3 sets of Ragnaroks, essentially.
Yeah. And then basically by the end of the game, the one that scores the most glory points wins the game and is chosen to fight the actual Ragnarok at the end of his life. Thank you very much. Good night. I mean, that's the concept of Vikings, right? I mean,
That's the concept of Vikings. Yes, indeed.
moving on to how would we rate this game? Once again, I don't think Blood Rage is actually on the market. I think it's very similar to Spartacus in this condition. If you do find it, it's simply because it's been sitting on the shelf. However, from my understanding, very few have. It's not even reprinted at this point. So
I don't believe so. No, I mean, but like
if you can get your hand on second edition, get it, because it's a pretty good game. I can't see a second edition. It's more like a reprint that might happen more than a second edition. So they might come out with another batch for you to buy off the shelves.
They might. I mean, just if you want to get your hands on this game, like most other games, just look around, do a little bit of shopping. Most probably you'll find some second-hand games much easier than you find new off the shelf. But in any case,
Ben, would you send me yours?
Would I sell you mine? No, dude.
Good
No.
answer.
It's my collection.
I can't be friends with you if you actually came to the point where you're gonna sell such a good game like that.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, even if it wasn't a good game, Don, you and I are collectors,
Yes.
and so collecting means keeping
till the end.
till the end
It
of
doesn't
time.
matter how. It's like that son or daughter that you don't really, you're not really pleased that you have them, but you keep them anyways.
Dude.
I'm joking.
Okay.
Heading on to the guides table for us to rate the points. Once again, we're gonna go through like rules, setup, mechanics, and all that stuff one by one. There's 7 components we want to talk about, and we give them a rating 1 to 5. 1 being the worst, and 5 being the best.
And with the first category on this list, we have design.
Indeed.
Now, the design of this board game is really great. There is a lot of attention to detail. The artwork is stunning. If I do say so myself. The board is quite a heavy-duty board game board as well. The box is a nice, big, chunky, quite heavy-duty. Not the most heavy-duty box that I've seen, because I do have some games that do have a cardboard stock for the box, which is thicker. But having said that, it is a really good design all in all. Even the design of the cards, the player sheets. I
think the fact that it came out through a Kickstarter allows that flexibility of saying, listen, we want a good quality board game, not just as a game, but everything, the components and everything inside of it. So they put up that kind of mark of, listen, in order to get this high quality game, this is the mark that we need to reach. They went above and beyond when they came out with it, and I think it's reflected through the design.
Even something that I really like in the design is the design of the storage of the pieces within the box as well. There are specific boxes and storage, plastic sort of container boxes within the board game box itself as well. So all the pieces and all the miniatures do stay nice and neat and tucked away inside the box, which personally I love, as you might have heard from the previous episode. So with all of these points all together, we would like to give design a
5.
Yes, a 5, and a very well-deserved 5 indeed. I do think so.
I think it's one of those board games that we don't actually... It's one of those... You know how we used to complain because you keep them upright so everything's moving around? This is one of those board games that doesn't have that problem because it has the right storage that every board game should have.
Definitely.
And that's, I think, where it hits a sweet spot for us. However, we've been explaining about the rules and how the game works. Let's go about how these fit into the category for us. Rules.
Yeah, rules. Rules are particularly easy to follow. They are sometimes, it might not be for the, perhaps maybe not the novice board gamer, but something that some of the more trickier rules has in favor is that they are very well explained.
Yeah, there's a lot of diagrams, a lot of, they thought of every possible scenario and they put it into the rule book. And while you would think that something like that would increase the volume of the rules, luckily it didn't, because it seems like there's only a few hiccups that might be misunderstood, but everything's cleared out in visual and in text as well. Everything's well organized, everything's well separated in them. So overall, I guess we could say that along with the design, rules also gets the score of a
Of a 5,
Yeah.
definitely. I think that the 5 is well warranted for the rules. I really like how they're laid out, explained, and as Don mentioned, the diagrams are super helpful, especially when it comes to marching, invading, and knowing how and when and where to move certain components. Having a diagram, both you and I, Don, we're more visual,
Individuals.
people, and learning things and learning rules visually seems to help a lot more for us. So we really appreciate that, and we think that's a really good bonus to have there.
However, that being said, there is a page in the rule book that says how to set up, and this is where unfortunately we hit a bit of a slide down in our ranking. Overall, the setup in itself is a bit complex. It gives me the feel like I'm almost setting up a Fantasy Flight board game to a certain extent. It's all the pieces. There's a lot of items running around that you want to keep track of. Be it the mini cards that you get for your hand size, be it the figurines, the boards, everything in total. Takes a while to set up the right way, and some cards do feel like they're there for just a period of time, and then you might just throw them back into the box. I don't really appreciate it when the board game doesn't make use of every single component that it comes with. So for that, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to downgrade the points. What about your stand on this?
I tend to agree. There are a lot of small pieces and components in the game, and we'll talk about components in a little while. However, setting up all these small little pieces on the player sheet tends to be a bit, cumbersome at times. You have to keep track of each and every single one of those tiny little pieces. We both are big dudes. We got a little bit, big fingers, and so they fall out of fingers, and they're very difficult and fumbling around to set them up on the player sheet sometimes. At least that's for myself. And also,
the game is huge to set up anyway, so you do need a large playing space anyways.
You definitely do need a large playing space. This is not one of those games where you could play on your kitchen table. We'd probably, unless your kitchen table is one that seats, 12 or...
Well, even if it seats 6 is just about right. If you have more width than length,
yes,
it helps.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think overall... It's not the easiest thing to set up. It's not the hardest either. So it has a sweet middle ground to it, and this is why we gave it a 3.
Yes, I think a 3 is very fair, and it is not the most difficult because, believe you me, we will cover a game in the future, which if we could have put a setup as a 0, I would definitely give it a 0 because of all the complex pieces and the difficulty in setting up. This is not the case. It is fairly easy at times, depending on the number of players, but there are a lot of small things that can run around, possibly get lost, and you don't want that to happen when you're trying to set up a game for games night.
Yep. So adding the design, the rules, and setups together, we go towards the mechanics of the game. So this is the gameplay itself, how the mechanics work together, how you can gameplay in this. So we went over the rules earlier, as you heard. The mechanics for me over here drop just a tiny bit from the rules itself, simply because of the fact that if you are 2 players, because this is a 2 to 4 player game, right? It might become a bit monotonous with certain mechanics. So some cards would feel a bit dull in your hand. There's not a lot going on. You're just trying to think how to get the most points out of the whole thing. What I'm coming down to essentially is the only reason why I dropped it a point from the other 2 that we gave the highest is simply because there is a factor of keeping track of your upgrades, keeping track of I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. Why did we give it a 4?
It's okay. Keeping track of the upgrades. You can cut it over there, and then I can come in and say. Or you can just say, what do you think?
Yeah, so it's giving me that kind of like, there's something missing with it to give me the upper hand of feeling like this is the ultimate board game while the team is there for me. What do you think, Ben?
So I think that the game does have some good mechanics. I personally really love the drafting mechanic within the game. Um, uh, Possibly, if I had to attribute the point loss to something, I would probably give it to the combat. We are,
Oh yeah.
yeah, we are particularly fans of. What kind of combat are we fans of? I think we really like the mechanics of Spartacus with the rolling the dice and
The element of luck, because you're not quite sure how well you're going to do. I think the fact that I'm not a big fan, and this is a bias. I think this is what I wanted to say earlier, and you reminded me. I think the fact that my bias towards board games that require you to make combat through cards, so people have card numbers, rather than being properly resourceful, or there's a certain amount of dice you have to roll, it puts me off.
Okay, yeah, I mean, cards are not the best, I would say, use of a combat mechanic. Simply because the way it works is that you're just adding up all the power strengths of all the tokens on the board, and then you might throw one against your opponent by revealing a very powerful card or a sly tactic card. But really, there's not much element of surprise to it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The mechanics of the combat, I think, lack a lot. It's not just the use of the cards, but even the fact that if you're going to walk into a province to pillage, you're giving everyone the opportunity to do the same, because it's all, it's free for all, basically. Anyone who can, because you're an adjacent province, to come in and start battling, and then you have the support. Yada, yada, yada. Where before you're feeling confident, you're going in because you have maybe a good card, all of a sudden all these people are coming in and your chances are slimmed down. So while you may have to think strategically for it, people who are not so observant perhaps will find this as a "oh come on man" scenario.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for this reason, and this reason alone with the combat, we would put this as a score of 4.
Yep.
There's not really much else to say about it. I personally do love the drafting mechanic. And so
it's one-time use anyway, so it's just in the beginning of the game for the drafting. It's not really
it's every round, really.
Well, every age.
Every age, yeah, every age.
Right.
Because you do draft cards every age, and I mean that determines, I think, the statistical advantage or disadvantage for the rest of the round. Because if you do get a couple of good cards in hand, that will help you probably with combat. If it doesn't, and then it adds up to the different strategies and things.
I'll never forget one of the games that stayed with me. I opened my hand, and I think it was my first opening hand, and I had more upgrades and quests than anything. I don't think I had a single combat card. And that even drives the hammer into the head on. It drives the hammer to the head of the nail even further for me.
Yeah. I mean, but that's why drafting, right? So you pick your cards and you pass on. But speaking of passing on, we're gonna pass on to the next.
Components is the next in our table. Components, basically, what we mean by it is the cards, the quality, the miniatures, the board itself.
Hold on, just pause. Because we didn't say this. When we open the box, what we find.
You have the booklet, no? Where's the booklet? Here.
The booklet's here. It's not written in the front. Or it is written in the front, yes. Yes, Dave, you're right. Okay, the game components. Yes. Hold on, let me just read these out.
I think the one thing that stands out as a component is the miniatures. It's not a bunch of, the same kind of print. Each clan has their own miniature 3D printed, which I think this takes it an extra mile for me. The fact that you have the monsters, 3D printed, it's high quality 3D printing. I love the variety. You kind of can identify with your clan that way. So for that specific reason, I think this is a high quality product for that as well. When I'm looking at the other components, Ben, what's your take on it?
So I just want to go through all of the game components that are found in the board game.
Sure.
Because we didn't actually mention this at the start of the episode. So opening up the box, you find a rule book. You got a game board. You've got 102 cards. There are 3 decks of 34 which can be drafted. You've got your Ragnarok tokens. A whole bunch of other tokens from pillaging to glory markers, clan tokens, etc. You've got the Doom marker token that is very important to mark which province is going to be brought to Doom by Ragnarok. Then you've got your clan sheets. There's a Valhalla sheet to track all the miniatures that went up to Valhalla. There's an age tracker sheet. And then we come to the 4 clans. There are 4 different clans, and each clan has its own unique style of warriors, leaders, and ship, as Don just mentioned. And then there are 9 monster figures. Also, you can keep track of all the different figures with the plastic colored bases that come for each clan and for the monsters. Overall, I really honestly do agree with you, Don. The miniatures are amazing. They are some of the best miniatures that I found in a board game. They are really, really, really good quality. The miniatures obviously don't come painted, so for the painting enthusiasts, you're gonna have a heck of a time painting, especially the monster figures.
Monsters. I've seen a couple of them on Instagram and other social platforms where they really go out and beyond to make them look so realistic.
Okay, the reason why I think we haven't given the components a full 5 out of 5 is simply just because of, if you ask me, I think the clan sheets. Now, I've played some board games where, clan sheets and player sheets are really nice, thick stock cardboard that are there and very, very durable. With the case of this game, Blood Rage, I find that some of the player sheets are a little bit too flimsy. Yeah, flimsy is the word. A bit too flimsy for my liking. Maybe not as durable as others. The draftable cards, once again, I'm gonna say they're really small for my big hands.
I think the size of them is harder to read sometimes of the text, and being so small, they can either get lost easy. It's not like these normals, deck of cards where and it's actually a much smaller size than that. I appreciate the size on the factor that it doesn't waste space into the box, because they don't
100%.
Because the rulings and text on them is not so much that you require big cards. However, they're too small as well for players to keep track of. It fits nicely onto the game board that you have in front of you, the character sheet, so to speak. So it is a 50-50, I see why they did that. Okay, it's fine. However, not my favorite printed out material.
All in all, we're gonna give this section, I think, a well-deserved 4. Yes, definitely. Talking about now replayability, and we had a very low score on the previous board game, Spartacus. Some things do apply the same here in the case of Blood Rage. Replayability, not much more than because of the game rather than for flavor, and the game does get repetitive over time.
I think we gave Spartacus the same scoring, and I coming to now realizing in comparison, I would have given Spartacus a higher scoring on playability, seeing how this board game fares. Simply on the fact because Spartacus, you have the different elements of the different houses have different powers, so you can have a new way to run the game. However, from my understanding, the clans don't actually do that per se. There is, I think, a special ability each and every one of them, but it's not so in your face as Spartacus did it. So, to be fair with that, I think we just gave them the same scoring at this point, simply for that reason.
I'd say that what Blood Rage has here that Spartacus maybe doesn't, to allow for individual replayability, is the card drafting, because you could potentially play a whole number of games and not draft the same cards or specifically go for different cards. And so maybe that adds to an element of replayability. However, it is just the same still. Invade, pillage, gain glory points, and that's the end of the game. No other flavor than that. So we have also given Blood Rage a score of 2.
And finally, the last in our list is the player interaction. How well does this game allow other players to interact with one another? Or is it kind of just a standoff between players, but they don't really interact? It's just how well you can play the strategy that you're on. In this case, Blood Rage does have an interaction between players at some point. We did mention during the combat, especially pillaging, that this happens. So basically, because there is that element, but it's not so strong, so you will feel this if you're just a 2-player on the game. Sometimes even 3, you don't really get into the combat that much. Player interaction is at a minimum because of these factors. If it's a full-fledged 4 and plus expansion, maybe 5, 6 players, you will find that then the interaction increases. But we're just looking at the base game here, right, Ben?
Yes, definitely. Just the base game here. With the base game in mind, I would say myself that I'd give it a sort of a 50-50 player interaction. Yes, you do have the drafting component, and you can, in a way, hate draft, and take cards that that other players might have been building up the strategy towards.
But that might actually hinder you in the long run. With player interaction on the board, I find that if you are less players, there might be less interaction. The game tries to fix this by covering certain regions that you start with at the start of play. So if you are 2 players, there's a X amount of regions that will be covered, and they go down until you're 4 and 5 players with the expansion. But the more players you are on the board, I feel the more interaction there is going to be. And it's basically down to, player strategy, I would say. Yeah, so in a way, it keeps true to a Viking-esque feel of going out into the world and you pillage places which basically can't really defend themselves. That's how I see it through this board game. But there isn't actual combat between other players because Vikings never really gone up against each other per se unless a civil war breaks out or whatever. But that's not the context of this game. In Blood Rage, it's basically everyone goes onto this one place and they're pillaging as much as they can to reward themselves with glory and go to Valhalla. That concludes basically our player interaction explanation why we feel this way. So what we're going to say is the scoring for this is going to be a
3.
Yep, like Ben said, a 50-50, into spots in the middle at 3.
Now, just a pause. Future Don Jab, if you're listening to this, you got to take this next part out. I'm doing some maths because once again, we didn't calculate this before we started. So we got a 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3 divided by 7 is...
Divide that by 7.
Divide by 7 is a 3.7. Okay.
So when we handle the average overall through our points, we get a
3.7 total score for Blood Rage.
So yeah, it stays in the 50-50 zone. It's a good game to have, but I think we can admit to our listeners, Ben, we haven't really played it that as much as we wanted to.
Yeah, we haven't played this game for quite a while. I think it owes to the replayability factor for me.
Yes,
we played it the first few times. We figured out the strategy to win, and then it's kind of no longer challenging in a sense.
Yeah.
So you kind of leave it on the board for a little while until you forget about it. Then just actually, preparing for this episode, we actually said, we
haven't played it for so long.
We haven't played it in so long, and we have to play this game soon. So now it is out of the shelf. It will definitely be played sometime soon.
I think we did mention about a month ago in one of our episodes that we did want to get this game out and play it again.
Yes, I remember.
Hype.
Yes, definitely. So guys, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Once again, it is our pleasure to bring you guys all of this wonderful, amazing gaming talk show style-esque podcast. We really love it. Gaming is our passion and we love doing this. And to show our
appreciation, we would like to thank our sponsors as usual. This time round, we have the Miniature Corner Studios, which they're on Facebook. You can find them there. They do local printing and delivery, and basically they do 3D modeling in specific, custom made, and they are the cheapest on the market, guys. However, despite that they are cheap, they're still giving out a 10% discount code of PlayUp21. You use the word PlayUp21 to get your 10% discount. We also have
TheGiantsTower.com. The Giants Tower also do 3D printing. However, they do it in more of a themed kind of fashion. They have all sorts of themes, from case in point Viking themed to perhaps ancient Egyptian. You got terrains, you got houses, you got all sorts of things all built together for specific themes. So if you are going to be running a themed, perhaps tabletop RPG game, do head over to thegiantstower.com and check out what they got. They are also starting to do custom prints, so you can maybe look into that as well. They're offering you guys, our listeners, a 15% discount on anything off their website if you use the promo code PlayUp15. That's PlayUp, all capital letters, PlayUp15.
And if you like what we do here at PlayUp, we'd like to remind you that we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/PlayUpMT, and you can support us for as little as €3 per month, guys. Every little bit counts. And as you heard, every episode, once a new Patreon comes on, we mention you guys as a big thank you for supporting us.
So, that's all that we've got today. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Game on. Whoa, done. Another one. Yes. Yes.
2 episodes.
The glory of Valhalla.